Hi, everyone. I'm just giving it a couple of seconds for everyone to join. Let's see if those numbers going now. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're very honored to be hosting three absolutely brilliant women and professionals, Faye Ward, the executive producer, and Kharmel Cochrane, the casting director, who worked together on this new period drama called Anne Boleyn, coming to Channel 5 on June 1st, and Olivette Otele, whose knowledge and experience working as a professor of history of slavery and enslavement will surely bring a very interesting perspective to this conversation. This event is part of a Second Home's cultural program. And for those of you who are new to Second Home, we are a creative and community-focused workspace and cultural venue with locations in London, Lisbon, and Los Angeles. I will now hand over to Olivette to introduce Faye and Kharmel and kick off the conversation. So thank you so much, everyone, again for joining, and over to you, Olivette.
Thank you very much for having me. I think I should introduce our distinguished guest. So let's start with Faye. Faye founded Fable Pictures to tell female-driven stories with a distinctive eye. 2019 saw the international release of Stan and Holly, not Holly, but Ollie, which was nominated for 3 BAFTAs, a Golden Globe and Wild Rose. Fable's latest film, Rocks, the third in Faye's long-running collaboration with director Sarah Gavran, was released in 2020 to critical acclaim, winning 2 BAFTAs, 5 BIFAs, including Best Film. Anne Boleyn is Fable's first TV series, with a stellar cast led by Jodie Turner-Smith. The Sony and Channel 5 drama will be broadcast on the 1st of June, next Tuesday. And Faye's previous producing credits include The Crown Series 1, Suffragette, and Golden Globe nominated series Dancing on the Edge. Very impressive.
Thank you.
Kharmel. Kharmel first cut her cast teeth as a casting director on the acclaimed Daniel Wolfe music video Time to Dance, starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Callum Turner. She followed up with award-winning films such as Lilting, 2014, and the BAFTA award-winning Home, 2016. Over the past 11 years, she has earned a reputation for championing new and diverse talent in projects like The Witch, The End of the Effing World, and The Lighthouse firmly cement her position as one of the most exciting British casting directors working today. Well, thank you ever so much for joining us, both of you. And I would like to finish again with Kharmel's latest, which is a production that includes St. Maud, which has been released to wide acclaim, and Mothering Sunday, and of course, Anne Boleyn. So shall we delve into the matter at hand and start that conversation? I have so many questions for you. I wrote a small piece for The Independent, and I just wanted to, and in that piece, I talk about a few things, but let's delve into the matter of hand, which is why Jodie Turner-Smith? Who wants to answer that first question?
Do you want me to go first, Kharmel?
Yeah, sure.
Well, to sort of rewind a tiny bit, you know, just as you mentioned, so Fable Pictures is our company, and that me and myself and my partner Hannah Farrell have, and we loved champion stories that's about underdogs, about working class people particularly. We like to find stories that have a very female lens to them. Mm-hmm. And we were approached about making something about Anne Boleyn. And I think what excited us the most was the idea that the story of Anne Boleyn is a story you think you know. It's one of those sort of quite patriarchal, traditional stories that you sort of imbibe in some way, you know, in this sort of, everyone learns about it at school. And it's a specific perspective of history that we're taught. And actually, if you think about rewinding on what you think you know and what you should know, is that what we wanted to do is tell the story from Anne's perspective. The idea that this show is about Anne's story in that moment, and that she was married to a psychopath. She wasn't married to him very long. He murdered her. And put it in the context of that channel rather than, and completely see it through her eyes only. And in our show, you never see any scene without her perspective. I know traditionally in Tudor stories, you know, they're always surrounded by who's going to be the heir. Is there a miscarriage? Is there a stillbirth? And actually, you always leave the woman in that moment. And it's normally told through the story of the messenger boy telling Henry or telling Cromwell or telling whomever the importance of this baby existence. And actually what we wanted to do in that moment was stay with the woman, stay with her, how it felt to be her. And so to go back to the reason why to cast Jodie is we wanted to tell the story from Anne's perspective and for you to reset your expectations of your own sort of baggage you bring to Anne Boleyn.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Kharmel, what would you say about that? Because it makes absolute sense. But let's get it out of the way. What about the diversity element here? Did it play a crucial role in there, or did you think that, you know, actually we're going to go on about this differently?
I thought that we would approach it from, you know, a modern contemporary angle. So for me, it was, you know, what actress out there embodies all of those characteristics, the regality, the power, the strength, you know, and just watching her in something called Queen and Slim, she is a queen. And I very much stand by that. And so, you know, in terms of the diversity, it was something that we were obviously aware of, but I definitely didn't think it was going to be, you know, it's just moving forward. It's progressive. It's something new and wonderful.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I can see how you made it work, both of you, because your answers are complementing each other. It's the feminist side, it's the female power, it's the placing women at the core. It's also about reflecting contemporary outlook and what it is today, because we're looking back as people of today.
And as Kharmel says, you know, Jodie is not only an absolutely phenomenal actor, but what we were all intrigued about, you know, when you're casting specific roles in things, you know, not only do you have a conversation about how great of an actor they are and do they suit the role, but don't we, Kharmel? We tend to have a conversation also about, will they like the role? Yeah. Is it something you think that will they be attracted to? You know, you have that thing because you want to lure them in as they want to lure you in some respects. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we'd read that amazing Vogue article that Jodie had written at the beginning of the pandemic about childbirth in a pandemic, but also about systematic racism in the medical world in America. And she was so eloquent, you know, it felt like it felt like when we sent her the material, it felt like she sort of embodied lots of attributes of Anne Boleyn, and that the kind of brainstorm of the kind of thing we wanted our story to tell, she was sort of already kind of igniting in that as well. So it's her as an actor as well as her as a whole human.
And just the status of having someone of her caliber.
Yeah,
no, it's wonderful.
Yes, the charisma. I should stop gushing about this, but I mean, she's just pure charisma. So let's just get it out there. I have a question about, you know, the kind of the character of Anne Boleyn itself. Were you inspired by paintings or anything? Because the imagery is stunning as well. The colors, the photos, everything. So did you have things in mind when you were doing it, both of you?
Yeah, I mean, I know speaking from, and just to also say, Eve, our writer, it was her clever idea. Again, you when you're telling a story about something, it's for always a little, you need to find the way into the story. And her clever idea was, let's tell the last 5 months of her life. So you have that countdown. We all know she died. That's the one thing we all do, and how she died. And then within that, then working backwards, the one thing we wanted to do is, and this came from Lindsay, our director, didn't it, Kharmel? The idea that she wanted you to really understand and live as an audience in the environment of what it must have been like to be Tudor. The idea of that sort of macabre, medieval life and death. And that's why you see when everyone gets to watch it, you'll see there's sort of quite these sort of macabre messages through dead skulls and rats and weasels, and she wanted that you to really feel like the humanity within the Tudor world. You know, sometimes I feel like, and in a great way by the way, period drama can feel very staid and the costumes wear the actors and then it's all about that, but actually what Lindsay and Eve and everybody wanted to create was the idea that you could feel that world a little bit more and that you could breathe it, and that what Anne Boleyn, you were sort of in her head breathing and feeling the wet walls and that light. And you're right, there wasn't a specific picture that we drew upon as an inspiration, but you can sort of see from those Holbein pictures anyway, it's got a mood-like quality to it.
Absolutely. Kharmel?
Yeah, I think that for me, less so on the pictures and the visual, because that was definitely something that came afterwards. It all kind of lives in my head for a while, but Lindsay was so good at being clear. I mean, everyone was. It really was a collaborative effort. And so there'd always be these bits of information coming through that would really help. And Lindsay would give me references and music, just things that really propelled everything forward.
Yes, absolutely. There was something that was intrigued of. You talked about, period drama, and for me that was a period drama. And then I suddenly realized that you kind of called it a psychological thriller. Why?
Because we wanted to tell a story that lived within a head of a woman who was powerful, who was vulnerable, who lived in this very isolated patriarch world, and that actually, the system around her, the more powerful she got, the more system around her wanted to close her down, and eventually did, in the most awful way. To put it really starkly, Henry got engaged 24 hours later, married 11 days later after Anne died. And for the history buffs around, they were having a love affair 7 years before they were even married. So it's pretty stark stuff. I forget what your question was suddenly then.
Well, it was about the psychological thriller, because we know what happens at the end. And it makes sense now that I've seen it. But you would think, well, there's no mystery in there. We know what happens. But I can tell you, it's gripping. But how did you actually go on about constructing these moments of absolute tension?
I think the scripts were so page-turning. I remember reading them, and you just whizzed through them because it was so gripping. And I think that goes back to the psychological thriller element of it. But I think everyone that read it, the actors that read it, everyone loved it.
Yeah, Eve is a really incredible writer. Her name's Edwin Turner, and she's just amazing. And I think because also you think you always know the story of Anne, and the moment you start to get in Eve's head, whether you're reading it at that point or watching it, it sort of starts to reset how you think about things and how you think you're taught things, and maybe that other stories are told in a certain way. And I think that's the thing that gives it that psychological pace, as well as there's a countdown to her death.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a question for both of you, which is more to do with, we talked a lot about the industry, the film industry not being diverse, and so on and so forth. And this is not my area of expertise, but I was wondering if, you as professionals, you had advice for young people from diverse background who want to direct a movie or work in casting or work as casting director. Is there something, first of all, the advice you could give them, but also if you as, expert and people who have loss of experience, you actually learn something different, and what would that be?
In terms of any kind of aspiring casting directors, the NFTS have just launched a course that Shaheen Baig and Gina J have been behind, to try and make it accessible, to try and show everyone that it is a job, we exist, because I think so often we're hidden and you don't really know how it happens. So I think that's really good in opening it up to people, you know, from other paths.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, I think the industry's doing better about diversity on camera, but I think we've still got quite a big problem with diversity off camera, and with diversity in people of power, in truth, you know. We really do, and it's something we're all striving to transform and change, but there's a hell of a lot of work more to do. And I would say, you know, like what Kharmel was saying, I think actually a lot of people don't actually really think the television and film industry is relevant to them at times, and also that I'm not sure that everyone's very got clear why would they, about all the amazing different roles you can play within the world of film and television. You know, I feel like writers and directors and actors are sort of the most obvious ones, and that's what everyone aspires to, but actually there's like 150, if not, you know, 500 other roles that people can make very, very good careers of. And I think that's one thing that I think we need to try and work really hard. And we've talked many times, Working Title have opened a school for crew alongside the National Film School. And I think we're all going to try and do a lot more work within schools just to make people aware. You know, there's an amazing role called a script supervisor, which is an absolute amazing job for people who absolutely love stationery, who are incredibly particular humans, who like to be sort of get yourself really dirty and in the middle, at the same time not feeling like they want to have the whole production on their shoulders, you know. And even if you're in catering, right, there's like amazing job to be, you can travel the world and do there's just like so many different jobs that I'm not in the film and television industry that I'm not sure actually people are that aware of, that I think needs to be changed, as well as the leading jobs as well.
Yeah, I saw how much a rigger gets paid the other day and thought, I should retrain.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, this is fantastic, because it's giving people, you know, some hope, opportunities, and this is what these conversations are about. So, in terms of what you learn, what you know, something special that you could draw from this experience and the making of this series, what would you say, Faye, that the one thing, or maybe two or three, that's
well, yeah, I've probably got more than one, but I would say back to what Kharmel was talking, it was an absolutely true collaboration, this production. And don't get it wrong, that's not always the case, and sometimes it is the case. I feel like it really felt like Kharmel and I have worked closely before, and in fact Lindsay and Hannah and all of us as a team, a collection of the 10 that started the process and then continued on. And I felt like also we have to be clear that we came off at the back of a start of a pandemic, really. You know, we started shooting in November, and as you know, the pandemic you know, appeared in our very vision in March, and at that point nobody really by September had worked in the film and television, had they come out. So we were sort of walking into the unknown of pandemicness as well, and I think that also gave a special quality to everybody's input on the material, because people hadn't seen each other for a long time, and I think people were very nervous that work wasn't going to exist at that point. And I felt like actually a great thing to all of us to move up to Yorkshire together, to be together for a long time in a very cold castle.
Yes. We have a few more minutes before I start looking at the questions. Another question that I did have was to do with, how do you work with this idea that the story is known, the script, everything is set, but there are always the unpredictable. So in other words, in the course of the work, are there bits that you were kind of added last minute or were forced to remove that we will never see? Or are there bits that you consider that after watching, you know, by going through the editing process, this really doesn't fit?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, that's the whole process of film and television. You know, you have to retell the story again in the edit in a way that you don't know. But what's amazing about that process is as the train chugs, as we call the train, it evolves and evolves. And Kharmel, we've talked about it a few times, but you know, there might be roles that you've cast where the role felt, what's the word? You know, that it wasn't going to be that in focus particularly, but then actually as the edit evolves and as you watch these actors bring these people to life, it completely transforms how they're portraying them, right, and their importance in that story.
Yeah, and sometimes their performances elevate, you know, what's written, and vice versa, and you can get some real surprises, good and bad.
Yeah, you can also do it, you know, literally, you know, when you're filming, you're all looking at a tiny monitor, and you're normally focusing on what's the scene about, is it working, have we got what we need out of the lead person, and of course you always want to be looking around it too, but really that's really what you're focusing on. So when you get in the edit, you're able to sit back also and see these incredible performances from other people, and I've always really enjoyed that experience. It feels like, you know, people bring so much to the table when it comes to film and television process.
Brilliant, thank you. We have quite a few questions. So questions, I'm looking at my phone because some questions are coming through, but I'm going to concentrate a bit more with the Q&A and the chat. Something's going on here. Let's just see a few questions here. When it comes to diversity, there's an argument to be made. This is coming from Maria Kibig. An argument to be made for telling different stories rather than displacing historically white characters, but maintaining the same historical narrative. How do you respond to this? Who wants to answer this one? Do you want me to rephrase?
I think I get it. I think the answer is, is there room for millions of stories in truth? And I feel like, and at Fable Pictures, we develop lots of stories. And Anne Boleyn in this moment was the story we were able to tell, i.e. commissioners were giving us the money to tell it. And we took that decision to tell this story. But of course, there's room to tell lots of stories.
Absolutely. Another question, now you've got this first TV production under your belt, how has this influenced what TV projects you are looking to do in the future? Or both of you, actually. That's a good question, isn't it? Kharmel?
I think I started, I mean, we had such a quick and tight turnaround on Anne Boleyn that I didn't really stop and pause and think about my career and my CV. It was just a really great job to be part of. But it set the benchmark really high. So now I'm just hoping that everything that follows is as wonderful.
And Faye, what would you say?
Well, again, Fable, what you do is you sort of develop many things at different places, and you wait for the commissioner gods to say when they want something. I think also, just to add, by the way, that this TV show is developed as a trilogy. So series 2 will be the story of Kitty Howard, another of Henry's wife that becomes gets beheaded, and our third in the trilogy is about Mary Tudor, who is Henry's daughter, and in fact the first British female ruler.
Oh, exciting, so much coming up.
Spoilers.
Yes. A question from Sasha D'Souza Wilcott. Did Jodie bring anything unexpected to the character? Reconfigure your understanding of Boleyn? What stood out specifically in her audition? You want to start, Kharmel?
Well, she didn't audition, so yeah, we didn't have that process. I just remember when I went up to Leeds for the set visit the day that I saw you in the castle, Faye, and just watching her come out fully kitted out, and you know, she makes you stop in your tracks. And I remember thinking, wow, that's a wonderful woman.
Yeah, I mean, Jodie's absolutely extraordinary. She's like, not only you know, she knows about Anne Boleyn. She held that character, and in turn, you know, all the other actors who are also equally brilliant. I'd hate not to mention them, but she's really brilliant at turning up on set and doing the actor bit, which is really, really, really difficult and hard, and being in the moment. Very intimate moments, by the way. You know, there's moments where, you know, she's going through a stillbirth. There's sexual moments in there. You know, I think she'd be okay with me saying, you know, we talked a lot about motherhood in the development process, and there's a bit post stillbirth where we talked a lot about the idea of, you know, your milk still being around and the baby not being there, and how you felt about that. And Jodie was breastfeeding her own daughter at the time and used her own breast milk to help that process work and that. So she brought millions to the table and very intimate parts of herself. But also, you know, when you're making especially a production like this in the middle of a pandemic, and like you mentioned, Olivette, about, you know, possibly changes and compromises because of locations and weather, you know, what she was brilliant. And as my job, you know, unfortunately what I have to do is, so I change the script sometimes to make that work and change that, and you know, you've got this whole like puzzle you do. And she was so amazing. She'd go, I totally get that, that's a great cut, but remember, you missed that line from that other scene, and we need to keep that line because of that. And she's just so sharp, smart. She knows that character inside out, and was really brilliant at bringing the themes of legacy, politics and everything to the piece.
Excellent. I have so many questions, so I'm going to go to the ones on my phone now. It says, for Faye, how do you decide what story to tell if you're not looking for them? How do you land in your lap? How do they land in your lap?
They come a million different ways, in truth. They sometimes come from an actor. If we've been talking to them about ideas and they come up with an idea. They sometimes come from a writer or a director. I think that thing that gets us going is the idea, where when we sort of pluck them, or when they feel like they've got a momentum, is, you know, that the thing at Fable, we'd like to tell stories that are fundamentally entertaining, but that feel like they've got a bit of a fire under their belly. You know, they're going to create conversation. They're going to maybe make you think about things in a certain way, and or feel like you maybe not seen something before, and this is going to be new to you.
And I think certainly whenever you call me, Faye, and say that you've got a job, I very, you know, I always instinctively think it's going to be amazing. So even when you pitched Anne Boleyn, I hadn't read a script, and I was like, yeah, I'm in.
It's brilliant, isn't it? It's the trust, you know, that kind of intimacy for having worked together already. Completely. It's fabulous. I have a question here. Do you think we'll get, Julia Hartley, do you think you'll get to a point where there is more period drama than looks at history from a non-European perspective? As a writer, I notice more and more productions are going for colorblind casting, but at the story level, the focus seems to remain on European historical figures.
I think that, you know, I'm working on an adaptation of something at the moment that is a period piece, but it's written by a Black writer and told from her perspective. And what's interesting in the casting process, finding the Black actress has been wonderful, but finding other actors of a certain caliber to sit alongside and not be the lead has been challenging, because everyone's, and we had that with our Henry. So I think that everything's evolving and everything's changing, and we just need to get as many different stories, as many different writers, directors, and people to tell their versions and their truths, and then casting will reflect that.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Okay, so next question. I think you've more or less answered it, but I'm just gonna probe a bit more. Now you've done Anne Boleyn, is there another historical figure you'd love to do next? If we forget about the trilogy, that's, you know, the whole trilogy. Also, were you already thinking of casting Jodie before she got the role? You've answered that, but, you know, another figure outside the trilogy.
Well, historically, yes, but for relatively contemporary, historically, we have got a movie that we're making. I say making, we're developing, but making about Mae West,
Mae West. Mhm.
the famous
Exciting.
movie star. Yeah,
Yeah, exciting. Completely different.
yeah, completely
Wow.
different.
Okay, so another question. If you are not represented by an agent, how can you connect with production companies such as yourselves and submit scripts? As this is also, this is also a difficult bottleneck issue in the industry. First part, are there any internships or different initiatives that help bridge this gap between grassroots talent and production companies?
To answer your first question, I think you're right. It definitely is a difficulty because production companies don't tend to read a lot of scripts that come unsolicited, and agents don't do too. But I would still keep submitting because there are moments where people do read. Normally, in regards to production companies, it's normally to do with capacity. You know, you can get sent 50 scripts a week, and that's just for the people you've asked them to send your script to, mind others. But what I will say is, in regards to sort of breaking through to the system, the one thing I would say is to join as many of those Zoom things like this and meet colleagues and contemporaries in your same world, because I think also, you know, meeting other aspiring directors and writers at festivals, of course, when we can all be in rooms together, but festivals and events, I think really help, because also if you're able to be part of audiences in those rooms, you get to meet and start to collaborate with people exactly like you, and then in turn, you know, you everyone sort of finds their momentum.
Very good. Another question from Kwo. Really excited to watch this series. I'm curious to find out if Anne Boleyn being Black is discussed in the show. Oh, we can't say. I'm just going to read the question and not answer. In the show at all, as I think it would add interesting subtleties to the story of Anne Boleyn. If race is not discussed explicitly or not explicitly, why was this decision taken? Do you think that this is enough to employ colorblind casting rather than engaging with the difficulties of being Black in Britain in the story? I think you kind of tackled this question at the beginning when you explained the reasons why you decided to do this that way. Contemporary outlook on the story of Anne Boleyn, but also the idea of telling a strong, the story of a strong woman. But then again, I don't want to, I'm just paraphrasing your words, but you might want to add something, Kharmel.
And I think that the colorblind casting is not the kind of terminology that we've been using. We've been discussing identity conscious casting, whereby with all of our cast, we were aware of their racial identity. It's not something that we're ignoring, but we chose actors based on their qualities and their strengths and things that really appealed to us, that matched the character, and things that they could bring to elevate character and make our show as wonderful as it is.
Okay, so I'm going to push for a bit more with the next question, which is related to this one, which is from Kiaolo Ling Tan. Sorry if I butcher your name. The question is, I think a Black body carries its own histories and experiences, so different from a white one. So how do you deal with this? Did you try to deal with it in the way a show like Bridgerton tried, or in some other way? It's interesting because people haven't seen it yet. So these questions are, yeah.
I think we do deal with it. I think it's definitely subtle comparatively to Bridget. I mean, they're very, very different tonally pieces, aren't they? Olivette, you'll know that from watching. They're very different. And I think we just go back to, there was a conscious, and there was, what we did consciously do is definitely keep casting, keep Henry as white, and we kept Cromwell as white for that reason too, because we wanted to be clear that you know, the people around her were the patriarch. You know, they're the ones with the stories you normally tell. And I think there was definitely a very conscious decision to keep those puppeteers around her to be white men.
You will see, it will all be revealed soon, next week. Another question, could you please let us know, how you prepare the show on a historical point of view? On which sources did you base your work?
Well, we read millions of sources, in truth. And attached to the project, we have an exec producer called Dan Jones, who's also an historian. And he was our litmus paper for any of our wanton liberties to be taken at different points. You know, he was quite interesting talking to him about it, because he was the one also, he said, you know, in the last 5 or 6 years, it might have been a bit longer, but, you know, history always suggested that, you know, it was Cromwell who was the puppeteer, and actually Henry had a certain innocence to him. Olivette knows obviously millions more than I do about all this, but
no, but I love the interpretation and the representation.
Sorry, yeah, my GCSE version, by the way. And Dan was explaining to us that, you know, the warrant card has been unearthed that were completely Henry's orders, and that was unearthed only in the last 10 years or so into the ether. And I think all those small little details like that sort of spurred us on to be telling our version of how we want to tell the story.
Yes, and you can see how it transpires in the series. It's fabulous. Okay, so a question: how can an aspiring actor get her foot in the door at Fable?
Oh, over to Kharmel on that one.
There's so much. I'm very aware in my day-to-day that the industry is kind of leveled, well, no, not leveled out. The industry is set up for people who have certain resources. And so we constantly try and look for other places to find people. So you'll see Instagram posts where we look for people to play roles and lead roles as well. I just throw it out everywhere, and then we, you know, see what we get back. We do open calls, theatre groups, local schools, just constantly. That's my day-to-day, constantly looking for new places that we can find people. And then once we find them, we take them, and that's where Faye then gets to see them.
And we do the same, obviously in conjunction with Kharmel a lot of the time, but also on our last movie, Rocks, we found lots of young new actors who I think they would be very open to suggest that they never thought they could be or would be actors at the time, because they didn't think it was accessible to them. And we miraculously found them and brought this beautiful alchemy of amazing, collaborative, incredibly clever young women together. And that was a really interesting, great, very long experience. And we're really excited. And Bookie ended up winning the BAFTA this year for Best Newcomer. And, you know, we're absolutely thrilled to see her career and co-stars. And I mean, everybody's involved on that show, see how they evolve.
Excellent. Speaking of places and different locations, so Caroline Nichol, welcome to Yorkshire. What was it like filming in Yorkshire, and will the following films in the trilogy be filmed in the country?
I loved filming in Yorkshire. I filmed in Yorkshire a few times, and in fact we're going back with the little comedy we've got in the summer, which Kharmel and I are doing together as with the rest of the Fable team. And it was cold, there's no doubt about that. It was very cold in this very cold castle, and there was quite a lot of snow, but it was really brilliant, and it gave us our sort of epic quality. And Kitty and Mary, who knows where we'll be shooting them, but it will probably definitely be up north, I imagine.
Okay. So Sahar Shaker, question is, were you disappointed by any reviews, critiques that just didn't get it or reject your perspective on representation?
Well, we haven't actually had any reviews yet, or critics saying anything. I think what I will say is I do find it very irritating that majority of the critics, I say majority, in the main newspapers are white and male. Definitely is a difficult hurdle to jump. But I'm very interested in to see what people think about the material.
Yes, ultimately, you know, there's a critique, but there's us watching it.
Yeah,
No matter.
We're really extremely proud of it, and I hope the people who really, really love it are the right audience for the material anyway, and hopefully that we're speaking to the people who love the material.
And I think that you know, hopefully speak for both of us. That's why we do what we do, to get conversations started. There have been versions of Anne Boleyn before.
So the next question is more or less what you've talked about, but I still want to, you know, give it to you. It's Dennis Dogan, who's saying, is diversity of thought and perspective within marginalized and minority groups taken into consideration, or just making it simply diverse, because it can't come across as just ticking a box?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the opposite of what Kharmel and all of our team would ever want to achieve. That's by far, it's the opposite spectrum. For all the things we've discussed tonight, you know, we want stories to be told that feel modern and feel reflective of the society we live in, and that feel challenged of the past to the present, and that conversations can keep evolving and moving on.
Yeah. Kharmel, there's somebody who's saying, could Kharmel please clarify the point about the difficulty finding someone to sit alongside a Black actress in a lead role? Also, how does a non-named Black actress get onto your radar?
I'll start with that bit. We're just constantly looking all the time. So the actress that we've cast in this period show is not a household name. We auditioned probably over 150 actresses, and she was the best one. It's been difficult to find a leading actor that has certain, you know, we're always under pressure by the channels to come up with a household name. It's a very, very busy time. Lots of shows are being made. And if you're not the lead, it's not necessarily something that you're going to jump into.
Interesting, isn't it? I didn't know about that. Okay, so the next question is also, how does a non-named Black actress get onto your radar?
Just the same thing. We audition, we look and search everywhere. And that's definitely a big priority for me, is in things that I cast, is not offering up the people that we always see on TV.
Yeah. I mean, one advice for any actors that are watching and listening would be to follow all the casting directors on Twitter and Instagram. You know, a lot of them will publish auditions happening, open castings happening, specifics of whom they're looking for what roles. I would stalk them down on those Twitter and Instagrams.
I always say to anyone that asks, you know, have a sense of shows that you like to watch. Have a look at who the casting director is, roles that you'd like to be. Find out who the people are that are casting it, and then target them.
Yeah,
and
that's interesting. Sorry, go on.
No, there's absolutely nothing wrong. I hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, well, I've been told that I shouldn't email." Well, you have to knock down the door.
Yeah,
it's interesting because
and I would have also.
Yeah. So go on.
No, go on. I was just about to say, maybe also
Zoom.
Sorry.
No, you go.
I was just going to say to also be prepared, isn't it, Kharmel, in that way that sometimes, obviously, sometimes you get direction and sometimes you get pages to do an audition, but sometimes they just want you to be you, and maybe to have something in your mind, like a poem or a monologue that you've read by somebody that you really love, a chapter from a book, anything up your sleeve that you've got and you know. So if someone asks you to perform, that you've already got that very prepared.
Yeah.
That's really good, because one of the last questions was what's the best way to get to know all the roles available within film and TV industry? So as you mentioned throughout, it really is about communication, looking out, finding the people you like and following them, following what they do and who they're working with, and so on and so forth. So that's really helpful. And there was somebody, and I think that's going to be the last question, but before the last question, there's somebody, Helen Basway, sorry again if I butcher your name, who says, Rox was amazing. So that's really good.
Well, I mean, that
yeah,
just to be clear, that film is an ultimate collaboration on that film. It's like everybody involved, from catering to leading actress, were very put all their blood, sweat and tears into that movie.
We have well, maybe one last question. Would you take on good faith criticism even if it's about the casting, or would be selective on who you would listen to?
No, I would take it. That's part of my job. As we said, we keep the conversations going and we hope to learn and evolve. Completely.
Okay. There was another question. I think we're going to wrap up now, but there was another question I think that you I'm just going to read it, but I think you more or less answer it. You mentioned it being difficult to find actors from other backgrounds to place alongside the lead, and was wondering what you think the reason for this, but you explain, I think. And it is is it a lack of opportunity given to other people of color, or the absence of them within agency? Is there anything being done to tackle this? So I think the second part of the question might be about who's in charge, within the agency. What would you say about this?
I think that's a misunderstanding of my original comment, but I think that there are lots of really good diverse actors, and I think we've got a lot of access to them now. It's really, really come on in the past 4 or 5 years. It's more, my original comment was more having someone of a particular, like not a minority, to sit alongside that's been difficult.
Yes, I think, these conversations are really important, because as you show, there's the perceptions there, the people's experience who are, striving to find roles and jobs and get in. And there are those like yourselves who are already in place, who are facing all sorts of things, trying to get people in, but also trying to answer to the pressure and the demands of, the big money, who know what they want to put in. I suppose you're pulled constantly, but well done. Anyway, well, thank you ever so much for all these questions. I'm sorry if I didn't get a chance to answer or to present all the questions, but I think it was fabulous, really interesting to talk to you.
Oh, Olivette, honestly, it was so wonderful to even meet you, speak to you. Your brain is outstandingly, I mean, anything I read of yours, I have to read about 10 times, because you're just so mind-blowingly incredible. I was like, I feel like on the side we'll have another chat, like I've got a million questions for you.
I'd love to talk with you both.
I was really nice.
I agree. I think we should do a follow-up. So now we have and we answered. First, thanks everyone for all of your questions. I don't think we've ever answered so many questions in the Q&A, so we got to at least 20 questions, so that was fantastic. And thanks for all of your energy, answering those questions. But and of course, recommended viewing is obviously Anne Boleyn, June 1st, Channel 5.
Yeah, and then it's run on June 2nd and 3rd, so it's 3 episodes run over the week.
So there you go. So get ready, get your popcorn ready, and watch it on June 1st. And some recommended reading is African Europeans, an Untold Story by Olivette, Otele. So read that too, and hopefully and come with as many questions as you can for the next one. Well, this conversation will be available on YouTube tomorrow, and we'll also release a podcast within 48 hours. I'll email everyone with the links, and hope you enjoyed, and see you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.